name's Ben Sigurdson. I'm the books editor and drinks writer at the Winnipeg Free Press. Okay, got that out of the way. If you have a question you want to ask Craig that we don't get to in the initial chat, hang on to it, and you can chime in during the audience Q&A later on, either by typing it into the chat box where we were just communicating with our tech issues at the bottom of the screen, or by unmuting, which is a little more chaotic, but a little bit fun too. Now, so on to the launch. The world, it would seem, is teeming with crime. At least that's what the myriad of crime stories, murder mysteries, noir fiction, and other such thrillers would have us believe. Whether they've got a chip on their shoulder, an axe to grind, revenge on the brain, which of course is served ice cold, best served ice cold as a Pacifico. There are all manner of private eyes, angry cops, police detectives who like to color outside the lines. They often don't play by the rules or play nice to get to the bottom of the case. And enter Luke Fischer. Craig Terlson's latest book, Manistique, is the second to feature beach-loving, beer-swilling, but absolutely not a detective, Luke Fischer, following our introduction to him in 2015's Surf City Acid Drop. There's not as much fun in the sun this time around for Fischer, who spends most of his time in the cloudy, dreary American Midwest investigating a murder that never happened and then uncovering one that did, and much, much more. On his pal Franco's advice, Fischer flees New Mexico after a card game gone awry in search where they were in search of Astrid, aka Jane, drives an old beater to the titular Michigan town to try and uncover just what kind of trouble is brewing. And here he meets Sam, the local sheriff, and together the two of them end up scouring the area for money left behind by a local who's been skimming from high stakes hustlers. They cross state lines, dodge bullets, deliver roundhouse kicks, and drink all manner of gut rot roadside coffee along the way. Twists and turns abound before the explosive finale. But to talk more about the nuts and bolts of the book, it probably helps to know a little bit more about the guy who wrote the darn thing, that little guy up there, Craig. He's a little on my screen, at least, for some reason. Is that better? Can people hear me? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, good. Moving on. All right. I was just about to talk about Craig. Maybe that's a sign. Anyway, Craig grew up in Saskatchewan. He graduated from the Alberta College of Art and Design in 1985 and eventually moved to Toronto, where he worked as a professional illustrator of books, magazines, and newspapers. And in the 90s, he moved to Winnipeg and became focused more on design. He's now the lead designer at Canadian Mennonite University and teaches there as well. And he also, in addition to all this, has worked in a psychiatric ward, as a part-time pastor, and more. In other words, he has plenty of material to work with. He started writing in earnest in the late 90s, and by the mid-2000s started getting some stories published before eventually turning his attention to longer format fiction. He's the author of 6 books, including, of course, the book The Reason We're All Here, Manistique. His other titles include the first Fischer fiction, Surf City Acid Drop, as well as Fall in One Day, for which he was nominated for a Manitoba Book Award, Correction Line, a novella called Bent Highway, and a collection of short stories called Ethical Aspects of Animal Husbandry. And when we chatted just yesterday, he sort of let it slip that he might just have another book ready to go and out there, sort of being looked at by folks. Anyway, I'm certainly glad he decided to pursue his passion of writing, because a decade and a half later, here we are to raise a Pacifico to Luke, to Sam, and to Craig. Have we been sponsored by Pacifico yet? I'm not sure. Anyway, with that, I'm very pleased to welcome the author of Manistique, Craig Terlson. Craig, I'll just do this. Oh, my audio is on. I guess I don't have to do it like that. I can actually clap.
Oh, you can actually clap. Yeah. Yeah. I tell you.
Did they get all that right?
I've been bugging Pacifico for a sponsorship deal. Yeah. They've responded a little bit on Twitter once in a while, but they still have not offered anything, because I will write for beer.
Yeah, well, hey, you and me both. Did I get all of that right?
Wow, I want you to describe all my books, because
no.
Oh, cool. I was like, wow, I'd read that book. I'd read that book in a hurry.
Well, that's good, because you wrote that book. Hang on, I need to switch to my other. I have 2 screens going on here, and I have some questions, and I had my intro or whatever, so which is why I was often looking off to the side. It was either that or shuffle around pieces of paper, which I usually do, which is really distracting and annoying. So how's it going, Craig? How you feeling about things?
The last time I did one of these things, it was people in a room. What is so super cool about this one is I've got people from other cities here, because I'm so thankful that people can come in from wherever. I saw friends from Toronto, and friends from Illinois, and friends from like wherever. And so
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin?
Yeah,
not Illinois. No one's here from Illinois.
Well, that's all right. Maybe someone, and they just haven't mentioned it yet.
I'm really good. I'm excited. I'm just these people. I see people on little boxes, and it kind of overwhelms me a little bit. So
yeah,
so cool.
Yeah, I'm used to sort of leaving the intros and stuff like that, like when I've done sort of book stuff or whatever to someone else. So it was actually sort of fun to do, and sort of I've done them before at McNally and stuff like that, but since then I've not really done anything like that. So it was a little scary, but a little fun. Hang on a sec. I got to scroll back up here. I passed a bunch of stuff. So I don't know. Do you want to just sort of talk a little bit about your process and stuff? I mean, I know in another interview you said you do some writing in the morning, some editing in the evening, are you fairly good at keeping yourself motivated?
Maybe. People tell me I do a lot of things. I do a lot of things. I run a lot of concurrent careers, it seems like. When I started working at the university full time, I really had to figure out how am I going to write, because before I was self-employed for a long, long time. How am I going to write? And it was actually my wife who suggested, well, you're going to have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and write every morning. And I don't get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. But I did. And I did every morning for about 9 months. And that's how I wrote Surf City. And I went, oh, so I can do this. So the process has changed. Now I write in the morning, sometimes in the night as well, wherever I can fit it in, but it's sort of all over the place. I'm not some writers are like, you got to write every day. I go through periods like that, but then I fall off the wagon for a little bit and I get back on it. So it's just sort of like, you just got to keep driving.
Mm-hmm. And you've talked about sort of in another interview, you also mentioned or referred to yourself as a pantster, which like, as in flying by the seat of one's pants, as opposed to like sort of more of a planner. Now, does that also sort of apply to like the story as well? Like you just sort of, you go through, you blast, you start at the beginning, you go at the end, you sort of jump back and forth. I take it you don't do like cue cards and like whiteboards and stuff like that?
I really don't. I mean, some outlines work for some people, but for me, they really don't. They just kind of, I've tried them and the process just dies if I know everything's happening. So actually, I just kind of light it up sometimes. And sometimes every book I write has a soundtrack. There was a whole lot of surf music and Dick Dale in Surf City, and Upper Michigan had a kind of a different soundtrack, a lot of Tommy James and the Shondells. I don't know why. And I would just blast it and just write and write and write. Pantsers get stuck though. Pantsers get in a corner and they go, where the hell am I going now? So then I would outline, but an outline for me is like a paragraph of what the next 2 chapters are. And I go, and that works for me.
Okay. And I was gonna say, you write yourself into a corner, and then what happens? The pants come off, or I actually don't want to know. So
no one comes in the office because they know, hey, the pants came off. So
the pants can come off at any time. Fair enough. Well, you do talk about you've talked about sort of setting as almost being like a character, and I really feel like you did capture sort of that overcast gloom of the American Midwest in Manistique. How did you find writing with the differences in setting between that and Surf City Acid Drop, where it was like, a lot sunnier, a lot hotter, sort of? Did you feel that sort of translated through into the writing as well?
Oh, so much. It's really, setting's really important to me, a sense of place. Not to the point, for those who've read my work, that I have pages and pages of description, but I need the reader to feel that they're there, that I want to be there and they're there. And so Surf City came out of my love for Mexico. I love Mexico to pieces. And so it was there. And actually, I really love Upper Michigan. And I've been there a number of times, including a week I spent, everyone kind of going, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Manistique. And I went to Manistique for a week by myself, and I bummed around and drank beer with characters who ended up in this book, and just sort of like really drove around the whole Upper Peninsula, and it rained every single damn day. So that got translated. That definitely got translated.
Well, I mean, and you have a background in visual design. Do you think that that sort of ties in with that, like setting the scene and sort of, you know, really developing a landscape because I've been to that area of the world a little bit. I've not been to Mexico or New Mexico for that matter, but I've been to, you know, the American Midwest and stuff like that. And it did really, like Wisconsin, Michigan and stuff. It really did translate. Do you sort of form a clear picture in your head? Is it sort of that sort of visual thinking that you maybe have as a result of your background?
Yeah, part of that for sure. Because I was an illustrator. I still am an illustrator, but I was an illustrator for a long time. And you would just get these dry as bone manuscripts that you need to illustrate, and you have to kind of picture. I mean, there's two. To be really brief, there's conceptual illustration. There's narrative illustration. And narrative illustration is just that: painting a room, figuring out all what's there. So I think that's helpful. But for example, when I went down to Manistique, I went down with my iPhone, sitting in the cup holder, making notes as I drove. And also people who've traveled with me know that I'm always got a notebook, and I journal every day because I'll go back to those notes afterwards and say, what did you see? You know, just kind of live into it. So I've been kind of a real chronicler of that. And I love good settings, probably the readers that I read. You know, I love a good setting in a book because it just sets it in place.
Well, who are some of the writers that who really can capture a setting for you?
Well, I mean, definitely in crime fiction, it's someone like John D. McDonnell's series of Travis McGee novels. They're all got a name like a color in them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like Darker Than Amber, for example, that Florida thing. And he was actually writing a lot of almost environmental stuff, which just happened to be crime fiction.
Yeah.
James Lee Burke, oh my Lord. James Lee Burke is an incredible writer. He's a literary writer that happens to write crime fiction. And he writes Missoula, he writes Louisiana, New Orleans. Those kind of writers, they just, you know, you fall into their, it's always like someone told me once, it's like you go on a trip. I mean, even Graham Greene. I mean, not just crime fiction. You want to go somewhere, just read Graham Greene. You know, you can go to Cuba, read Graham Greene. You know, and so I love that in a book. But the hard part is to not overdo it. They have to just kind of be there. So I take a lot of inferences from crime writers, from literary writers, any kind of writers. But I think setting's always been kind of important to me. Yeah.
And I mean, you're talking about sort of, you know, documenting things, you know, while driving around on your phone and stuff like that, and observing and interacting or watching these people sort of in Manistique when you were there. And I feel like dialogue is another thing that you really excel at. And I just, the dialogue just felt so authentic in this book. I was just really floored. And I just wonder if, like, you know, I think some people have a real knack to be a listener and to sort of really pick up on nuance and stuff like that. Are you sort of an avid listener when it comes to, you know, maybe you're poking in, overhearing conversation or something like that, or someone says something that really strikes you, just sort of like, you got to write that down and sort of like log it for later or whatever?
Well, that's a great question, because there's a couple of things. When I was in a bar in Manistique, the bar that actually is called the Gentry in the novel Manistique. But I was in a bar and I was nervous to take my notebook out because it's not a place you would take notes in. And so I was sort of like listening, and sometimes I would rush back to my motel room and write a whole bunch of notes afterwards, kind of stuff. But even then, the weird thing about dialogue is I do have a really good ear for it. I'm not sure why, because it's dialogue in books isn't like we talk. Because if we wrote down like what we talk, that's just boring as hell. But there has to be a rhythm and a cadence to it, which is almost like music. It actually really helped me. There's a few people here tonight, like my partner in crime, my daughter Reba, when we wrote for The Fringe, having to write dialogue and having people speak it out loud, that'll teach you some stuff.
Yeah.
Having to write a comic strip, which I did for 7 or 8 years, and Mark is here, who helped me in the beginning really learn how to strip down stuff, strip down dialogue, because dialogue should do only 2 things. Dialogue should either reveal character or advance the story. That's it. If it's not doing those things, forget about it. And then the other part, I don't know. I just sort of fell into it, and I don't think about it too much because it can get forced. But someone said in a review that my dialogue feels like they're just eavesdropping on it. And that was a high compliment. because I want it to feel really natural. Yeah.
That's perfect. Yeah, I mean, and because that's essentially what you were doing probably when you were sitting in Manistique. Is the reading out loud thing something you ever do with your dialogue?
Almost always.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Like you have to hear it. You have to hear it, kind of thing, because in the later drafts of a novel, because I'm a pantser, but then I'm very about editing, drafting, getting it right, and then you got to read it aloud to hear it. Yeah. You got to hear the cadence. Yeah.
Okay, so we should talk specifically about Manistique. I mean, I won't get into the nuts and bolts of plot too much or whatever. I loved it though. I thought it just I sped through it in no time. Do you enjoy coming back to the world of Luke Fischer, and in this case, adding someone like Sam, the sergeant, into the mix?
Sam was a gift from the writing gods.
Yeah.
There's a few characters that come along and they're just a gift. Sam is not based on anybody, but she came out full force and she was just a character, and there she was. Mm-hmm. And it's weird, if you really have a great character, you just listen to them. Like it's weird. It doesn't even feel like writing. You just actually listen to what they're going to do. And Sam was like that. I love coming back to Luke because I'd never before, this is the first sequel I've ever written to anything. So I had a character who was already in another book. And that's a different starting place already. And somebody said to me after the Red Surf City, they wanted to know more about Luke. And I said, yeah, I do too. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote it, and now I'm writing another one because I want to get to know them. And you have a weird relationship with the characters, but it was a really fun world to go back into. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I on the cover of Surf City, I think it says a Luke Fischer novel, right? So that must have been your intention, sort of starting out, and then you go to Manistique, and then obviously at the end of this book, it just leaves it wide open for like the next book, right? Which is well planned and not didn't feel forced or anything like that. I mean, I think all the way through people have questions about his background and really want to know more about him and stuff. This mysterious place north of the border that he sort of comes from or whatever, this unnamed place, which could probably be one of many places in which you've already lived, right? But I also enjoyed really that there's this sort of timelessness to the book. I mean, obviously it's a time when there's cars and stuff like that, but there's no and lots of like sort of cool models of cars, but like and references to that kind of stuff, but there's no reference to there's never a point where Luke like picks up a cell phone or something like that, really. So it's like, was that sort of intentional, or was there a date sort of thing in it that I missed or I forgot about or something like that? But it feels like it could sort of be any time.
Good. I'm very dodgy when I answer that question because on purpose it is anytime, mm-hmm. And you talk to other crime writers, and the perfect time to write crime is sort of like 70s and 80s, before there's a lot of cell phones and Google and all that kind of stuff, because it just ruins things. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like if Breaking Bad happened in Canada. Oh, he went and got cancer treatment.
Yeah, exactly.
You're done, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that. So I want it to be timeless because really, in a way, I'm starting to understand that this is a bit of a fable. That I want Luke to live outside of time a little bit. Now, there's references to things. In Surf City, I referenced microfiche. That was the closest I got to a computer. But on purpose, I'm really glad you said that. I want it to be kind of timeless. And sometimes I nervously ask people, when did you think this book was from?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, the really the only things that sort of stood out for me was like references to cars, but it was always it was always in my mind. It was always sort of like, well, that car's an old beater anyway, but then I don't know when it was from or whatever. So I think you did that quite well. Halfway through the book, Luke encounters this character Leroy, who I was really fascinated with when he's sitting outside there, and it's not there's this sort of mystical quality to Leroy. Can you tell me a little bit about sort of how that character came to be, and just sort of how he floats through that one passage and then sort of, disappears?
Yeah, Leroy is a very, I'm really glad that you pointed that out. Leroy is a very important character, even though he shows up for a little bit, because a lot of people ask me, again, reading the book, why is Luke doing this? And there is the idea of the knight errant, which is definitely comes out of things like Travis McGee from John D. MacDonald, and other people have write about knight errants. Why are they doing these things? Because it's the right thing to do. but sort of, you know, Luke is also running away from some things, including very much his own death, which is what we were all running away from. And Leroy wants to put that out in front of him, you know. And so I wouldn't say Leroy represents death. That's too allegorical. It wasn't my intention, but it was for Luke to probe a little deeper, like really into why are you doing anything, and what are you running from? You know, a big question for Luke throughout all these books is, what are you running from? And I'm going to answer a bit of that. There's a teaser in Luke 3, but it's definitely about death. And you're right, it's supposed to be mystical.
Yeah, no, it was great. And you know, like other characters in the book too, I mean, I think back to Sig and Floyd and sort of their sort of comical interludes, or not comical interludes, but, you know, just nice asides that sort of like dial down the tension a little bit before it sort of ratchets back up. Do you enjoy sort of injecting those kind of characters into the novel as you go along?
Oh yeah, I've learned a lot from one person I didn't mention is Joe Lansdale. Joe Lansdale is a Texas writer, Texas crime writer, and he's one of my absolute favorite. And he has this way of bringing characters in, and just they kind of bring, I guess it is sort of like, in a sense, it's comic, but it has to still advance the plot. So let's have a purpose there. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's just me just sitting in Manistique, having breakfast with Sig and Floyd. Yeah. And this is probably my growing up in a small town in Saskatchewan and hanging out at the Club Cafe. There's my sister. Yeah. Hanging out at the Club Cafe and just, you know, shooting the shit, listening to things. Yeah. And I love that. I love that, like listening in characters that, you're right, they drift in, they drift out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Another character that I really thought was very fascinating was Jane. And near the end of the book, in talking about Jane, Luke says, you know, she's like me. She goes after things too hard and then finds herself too deep, which I thought was quite accurate and quite well done. Yeah, I mean, I came out of Manistique wanting to know more about Luke's backstory, this vague notion he's from somewhere, you know, in Canada, went to Montreal, sort of spent some time in the ring, you know, before heading back south, and has this conversation with Benno that implies that, yeah, the next adventure could be sort of north of the border, a little further away from New Mexico and stuff like that. Yeah, and his backstory is just, to me, is like, you know, you could probably just do almost like a prequel or whatever, but I assume probably in Luke 3, as you call it, which maybe is a little biblical if you're asking me in terms of an actual title, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm writing this down. I'm writing this down.
Okay, yeah. And don't use Roman numerals, whatever you. But yeah, that's obviously, that would allow you to sort of flex those muscles, sort of, and flesh out that backstory a bit, I would think. Hey.
Well, you know, I just wanted to briefly respond to that. In a way, I really started out to be a literary writer. This crime fiction was really just on the sides kind of stuff. And I was writing Correction Line, you know, started out being a literary book, and crime fiction kept slipping into it. And Fallen One Day, again, is more of a literary book. But it's sort of like these ideas of crime come in, but I don't even like, I'll just say, I don't like genre. Like, I just like storytelling, right? And I think what you're pointing at is what I'm most interested in. Is, yes, things will happen, and I love a good fight scene. You know, I love fighting and smacking people about. I don't personally like that, but I like writing that kind of stuff and great fight scenes. But I want to know why. Yeah. Why are you doing this? What is driving you? And that drives me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I found, you know, there are a few instances where Luke and Sam end up. You're getting an invite to a little rough and tumble in the comments, it looks like there. But yeah, I like those scenes. I like there's a few scenes where, you know, Luke and Sam usually together are talking to these people that essentially, you know, like you know, a few chapters later or however many pages later, they end up in a gunfight with or whatever. And there's so many times where they sort of end up talking their way out of something or whatever, only to end up, you know, sort of with a gun pointed at them or whatever. But I did feel that sort of literary component. I think you know, it makes me think of crime genre only because it says a Luke Fischer novel or something like that. That's more of a crime sort of, or thriller sort of technique or whatever. But yeah, no, I think I really enjoyed it for what it was, and just for the sort of road trip component of it as well. I'm always a big fan of a good road trip novel. So in this one, you know, went through some areas of the world that I was kind of familiar with, and I could see the rolling hills and stuff like that, and the mist, and yeah, it was great.
Awesome. And New Mexico is really important to me too.
Mm-hmm.
One of my most favorite places in the States. I've only been a few times, but
mm-hmm.
that's a mystical place.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about that a lot. I mean, the environment there is just wonderful. And I'm really glad for what you're saying, because for me, what's most important is the storytelling and character. And they happen to get into fights because, you know, you get into fights.
Well, I've got some more quick hit questions, but maybe I'll save them for the Q&A if we need some there. But did you want to throw over to a little musical interlude?
I think that's great timing. I would love to do that.
Okay. I'm going to mute myself then, and I'm going to let you do that. And I'll come back after things are done.
All right. Awesome. So we're going to hear from, he's got so many things next to his name, like writer, musician, producer, director, king of the world kind of stuff, that I've known Cory from a distance for a long time, because my daughter Reba knows him better and always suggested that we should be friends. And I think that really why I've invited him here is because I want to start our friendship together now. I think that I follow Cory around. I've seen him perform in the Fringe and on MTC, and his amazing, really Fringe show mixtape I love just so much, because he got up there and he just played all the dad rock. And I'm there for all the dad rock. And then he was at a Manitoba book jam, and he picked out my book. He nodded it for a Manitoba author. And it's like, oh, wow. Well, what the perfect guy to write kind of a Luke Fischer, not write, I didn't know he didn't write this for the launch, but a Luke Fischer inspired tune. So for tonight, Luke, and your son's there too? Your son is there? There he is. Okay, good. Mackenzie's there too. They're going to play a song. And I want to also do a shout out that Cory has a new album that just dropped yesterday, I believe, from his band Good Show. And he's graciously offered that as one of the prizes as well, a free download later for that. So to check out Good Show, Graysville. So I'm going to turn it over to Cory and Mackenzie for the song called Devil's Got a Bad Rap.
Thanks, Craig. Thank you, everybody. I haven't quite read your new novel yet, but I've learned that Manistique is the name of a town and not a cologne for tough guys, as I thought it was. I think it would have like an Axe body smell to it, like an Axe body spray. You get that a lot. It's cheap. It's real cheap to buy. Craig, I want to tell you that I got a pitch for you so that I could play Luke Fischer when the movie comes out. Now, I know a director is going to say, like, you know, he's like really muscular, right? But I'll say, yeah, but he also eats whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and he drinks a lot of beer. So, yeah, I could. Is that a good pitch? Are you sold?
Yeah? You're in. You're in.
Right. Okay. All right. So I wrote this song actually a couple months ago, and it was inspired by a lot of things, but I was reading Surf City Acid Drop at the time. So who knows? Maybe it was. Maybe it was, Craig. Maybe actually everybody here is going to listen to this song and listen to the lyrics and think it's about, actually, it's about Luke Fischer. Here we go. All right. So here we go. Ready? Mackenzie?
Yeah.
Put your head down. Just play the game. Blood is part of the uniform. From the same place. Ain't nothing worse than down there. It's not how I get paid. I can't find anything better, except maybe getting laid. You took away all I got, all my love and my money and my shots. I'm not afraid of a punch. kick or a slap, because either I'm crazy or the devil's got a bad rap. The body keeps score, the brain keeps the time. It's hard being king when you're doing the time. Excuse me, I'm just changing who I'll be today. See if you'll know me from that X-ray. I find my comfort in adrenaline, in white and brown, and sometimes gin. I hide my eyes in a Red Wing cap, because either I'm crazy or the devil, he's got a bad rap. Here comes the champion. Bow to the king. We're paying the winners. So step in the ring. You took away all I got, all my love and my money and my shots. I'm not afraid of a punch, poke or a slap, but fuck it, I'm crazy, and the devil can kiss my... There you go. There you go. Thank you. Oh, look at that.
Wow. I just, okay, you get to play Luke Fischer in the movie if
Okay.
that song is on the soundtrack.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you just have it anyway. But yes, I come with the song. No song unless I...
Makes sense. Makes sense.
I've been doing this long enough to know to do those kind of things.
You could maybe have a Hitchcock sort of walkthrough or something like that in the background.
Oh yeah, I could. Yeah. I got the gut for that too. So
That was not a comment on physique or anything by any stretch.
It was good. I mean, before I'm going to move on really fast here, but
Yeah.
Cory asked me how old Luke Fischer is, and that's another question I'm kind of dodgy about because I'm not quite sure. You know.
Oh yes, we must. And also, big thanks to my fading in and out son.
Yeah, exactly. The ghostly son.
Yeah.
All right.
He's like the Leroy of the song. Sort
He's
of
the
just
Leroy of the song, the disappearing Leroy.
fades in and fades out.
Okay, so we're going to move on. I don't want to keep everyone too late and long into your very busy quarantine lives. So I'm going to do a short reading from the book before we go into Q&A. I've decided to read, it's actually not usually writers do the first chapter, but this is actually what used to be the first chapter. And it actually begins with Luke driving into Manistique. And it was originally in some of the earlier drafts, it was the beginning of the book. And then I realized the story had to kind of back up a little bit. So this is actually Luke driving into Manistique. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And we get to meet a couple of people who show up in the book. So this is from chapter 5. Manistique. Now there was a damn exotic name. A town with a name like that should be hugging the coast of southern France, soaked in syrupy sun, string bikinis, guys in berets and striped shirts, Vespas on the street musicians in black chinos, and gulls just happy to be circling in the wine-soaked air above Manistique. Problem was, it was piss and rain and I was in northern Michigan. A beat-up Ford half-ton sped by, sending spray that my wipers couldn't keep up with. The slick road caused me to fishtail, and I gained control of the beater, flipping the switch on the defrost fan to fight the windshield fog. I'd already passed 2 roadside motels, wanting to make it to the town with a weird French name. Up ahead, a pair of low-slung buildings gave off a Norman Bates vibe. A bright light shimmered orange-yellow through the rain, accentuating a pair of cracks on my windshield, one writing the height and the other the breadth. The glow grew like a broken sun, and I had to squint to stay on my side of the road. I pulled into the motel lot with a tall yard light that washed out my vision. I was done with a slick, winding road, and I needed a place to fall into. Bedbugs be damned. The owner stood in front of a set of purple curtains with white flowered pattern. She was 5'0" and on the slope side of 60, wearing a dress not that different from the curtains. She took my $50 cash for the room and let me know about the coffee and danishes she'd put out in the morning. Any place around here I get a beer? She wrinkled her nose. Well, everything's going to be closed. I was off to bed myself when I saw your headlights. She gave me a hard once over, clearly considering kicking me back into the rain-soaked night and giving my money. I'd stopped trusting little old ladies when one lifted my wallet back in the Puerto Vallarta market. So nothing then? Convenience store? Well, gas station about a mile up might have some more. She looked at the doorway behind her. I've got a fifth of scotch that I'd be willing to share for the right company. I grabbed the key off the counter and thanked her while the metal door banged behind me. Little old ladies, damn. It took a lot of miles to push back the memory of that poker room. I'd fallen asleep watching a Yul Brynner Western and sipping on a warm PBR that I'd forgot that I'd bought at the last gas up. The motel coffee in the morning could have doubled as engine cleaner, and I nearly took a tooth out biting into a Danish. I poured the coffee onto the cracked pavement and spun the Danish out the window with a beater. I peeled out of the lot and headed into town. Astrid, what the hell kind of name is that? The guy on the stool wore a Stetson that he probably slept in. He took a long chug on his coffee, waiting for my answer. I'd walked into the diner to get out of the drizzling rain, and it let up since last night, but the constant spitting on my neck was jangling my nerves. Astrid, it's a flower name, you moron. The cook reached over, refilled my cup, and then my breakfast buddy's mug, the only other patron in the place. Well, fruity tooty, look who's been out in the garden. Ignore him. I'll make a point of it, the cook said. I sipped the black brew, so strong I was surprised that it hadn't burnt through the cup. I figured the local diner on Main Street was as good a place to start as any. I described Astrid once already and got what I thought was a head nod of recognition from the two of them. So you've heard of her? I asked. You don't look like a cop. The cook studied my face. Or any kind of law, the other said. Someone asked me to track her down, I said. Track her down? Hey, you're one of those private eyes they're always showing on TV, except they wear suits and drive nice cars. Dirty Stetson guy looked me over. You look more like you should be pumping gas somewheres. Not a detective or a cop, I'm just helping out a friend. You said she was a younger woman in her 20s, the cook asked. This town is small enough that we'd remember a weird name like that, especially Snoopy old Sig here. Who's Snoopy? I ain't no damn dog. Sig leaned into the diner counter. She's more likely later 20s, maybe pushing 30. Long blonde hair, almost white, tied back. Nice shape, a bit on the thinner side. An image flashed of Astrid's lithe body bent over an upturned chair in the Verde del Gato. Life leaving her like candle smoke out an open window. I already told you all this. You said you want to know if she ever lived here, like in the past. That's confusing, or maybe shifty. The cook cracked a couple of eggs in the grill. Just what the hell are you looking for? You come in here asking questions, but we're not getting the whole story, and my bullshit meter's hitting red. Yeah, who's the damn Snoopy-ass dog now? Sig gave my shoulder a push. Settle down, Sig. Cook held up a hand. Maybe you better come clean and start with your name. Fischer, I already told you that. First or last? Why does it matter? Listen, wise ass, this is an honest town. I was about to tell them that I've been in a lot of little towns just like this one, and they were no more honest than the slicks selling swampland in Florida. Luke Fischer, first and last. You want some ID? Thought you weren't a cop, asked Sig. Save it and get to it. Who's this Astrid, and what does she have to do with anything around here? The cook asked. He flipped the eggs off the grill onto a plate next to burnt squares that used to be potatoes. The cook grabbed a chair and blessed his breakfast with a snaky trail of ketchup before he dug in. So spill it. I decided to lay the whole thing out. Okay, down in New Mexico, well, actually Arizona, there was this older guy who lived with Astrid. They weren't married. I'm not even sure how long they were together. It was long enough for him to get worried when she went missing a few days at a time. She went missing more than once. She had a wandering soul, I said. Sounds like more than her soul was wandering, Sig said. She always came back. Things got bumpy again. She got restless, started pacing the kitchen, lit out again. When she didn't come back for a week, the guy got worried enough to call my friend and ask him to find her. "The friend another one of those private eyes with a nice car and a suit?" Sig asked. "If your friend was the guy hired, why are you here?" Cook asked. It didn't go so well. My friend is good at what he does, but he got stuck. He told me all about her and the older guy looking for her. And he asked for my help. "You guys teamed up? Shit, this is better than TV." Sig leaned in. "What was that show we used to watch? Guy on a boat?" "Simon and Simon." "Yeah, that's the..." Cook held up his hand to silence Sig, who had just about fallen off his stool, leaning in. "What happened to your friend?" That is Sig and Floyd.
That was a great little portion to read. It was just like, you are a great reader too, by the way. You just like, you just sort of capture all the different characters, you know, even though you're just one guy, sort of reading three different characters talking to each other, you just like immediately, and it's not just because one's a high voice and one's a low voice or whatever, but like if you ever do an audiobook, you gotta at least pitch yourself for a role or two, or just the main role, I guess.
Those are hard, but yeah.
Have you done it before?
I've done readings before, but never an audiobook, no.
Okay, so if people do want to ask Craig any questions, you know, feel free to drop them in the chat. Like I said, you can unmute yourself and just sort of pipe up. I don't think some of these have like a raise your hand or whatever, but this one doesn't. That might be a little more chaotic, but there are a few that have come in already. So I sort of scraped your Facebook page as well with a couple questions. Well, I'll start with this one from Eli J. Terlson. No relation?
Probably relation.
Yeah, and first initials EJ. How curious.
That's super weird.
Is it? Or is it just maybe?
No, that's actually, until I had never thought of that. Wow. Okay.
So, okay, Eli J. Terlson asks, do you have characters' emotional arcs in mind when you start writing, or is that something you go back to and find later in rewriting? And what's your goal with the first draft? Those are two sort of different questions, I guess, or whatever. But it sounds like with Sam, you had this fully formed character. But yeah, I'd maybe talk a little bit about just that process in general.
Well, I think it goes back to almost following what's going on. Like Luke Fischer has a name Fischer because he's looking for people. I mean, that's why his name's Fischer. It's not anything beyond that, but he's good at finding people. And that is the only arc I have, is that he needs to find somebody. And that happens in both books. And emotionally, I think that whenever I edit, it's always about, is this true and is this authentic? I'm always asking that question in editing. So I think if you do that enough, the emotional arc will come through. The other question, like first draft goal is just to finish the damn thing. I think that first drafts, someone said, are the drafts that the writers tell the story to themselves. So I follow it along. So not a lot of idea about what the emotional arc is beyond someone is going to be lost and someone's going to be found.
Interesting. That's someone's going to be lost and found. That's very interesting. Are you a fairly ruthless self-editor?
Yeah.
Or do you find it difficult? You're like, no, I really like that. That needs to stay. But then you sort of...
It takes me a few drafts.
Yeah.
You know? And eventually I go, and often actually, you know what it is, Ben? It's when I read it out loud. And I read it out loud and I go, no, that's got to go. And so I am pretty ruthless, but then that's also why I hire an editor, because I want my editors to be even more ruthless.
Yeah, shout outs to the editors out there. Oh, I'm an editor, I guess not of your book, but it was very well done. So if you want to give a shout out to your editor.
I was going to thank you, but I'll mention there's a guy named Alistair Thompson who edited Fall in One Day. and he just did such a bang up job and made that a way better book that I asked him, will you edit Manistique? And he agreed to it.
That's
and
great.
He's really good. Yeah.
That's great. So I had a couple questions come in sort of having to do with Luke's personality. Evan Kuz, I don't know if that's a real last name or, anyway. The pop culture references, well, just because some people don't have their real last names on Facebook and stuff because, maybe they're a teacher or something like that. Anyway, I digress. It says the pop culture references are wonderful and brackets and enjoyed and appreciated being of a similar age. What percentage would be based on the book character's personality versus your own experience and then experiences? And then Braden also said, oh, there it is. It's hyper real, my last name. Sorry, Evan. You never know. Anyway, and a question from Braden also said, is Luke Fischer's character influenced by anyone you have met? How much of your writing from the town of Manistique to the descriptions of landscapes is taken from your own experiences? So we talked a little bit about your trip to Manistique and your documenting of that, but yeah, the people obviously they gravitate to Luke. They feel a kinship with him, and I think probably want to know sort of how much of it is just sort of in the mind of Craig and how much of it is like, sort of taking from your own experiences or someone else out there sort of, that they're emulating.
I think the starting point, it's interesting. The starting point was definitely, I wrote Surf City out of I'll be honest, it was kind of a dark time that I was having a lot of near deals fall apart by big agents in New York and stuff. And I was on the verge of quitting. Actually, I was on the verge of quitting writing because it was just I couldn't do it anymore. And then I said, I'm just going to write something I just really want to write. And I'm going to write something like all my neo-noir detectives that I love in the 70s, like Elliot Gould, in Long Goodbye, or any of these kind of ones. It's just this kind of even Chinatown type stuff, 70s type stuff. And I'm just going to write that. I'm just going to have fun with it. And so it started there. And it certainly poured a lot of my love of music and different TV shows and stuff like that. And just as Evan was asking, pop culture stuff. But the more I write Luke, and this is the good stuff, Luke becomes Luke. And he's got his own deal going on. And someone said to me recently, which I really liked, was that it's in Luke's voice. It's not my voice anymore. And Luke's doing his own thing. And I'm following along. So I feel like Luke has his passions and stuff, but they're kind of his. And I'm kind of backing up. Like, I think there's a bit of me in the beginning. For example, someone asked me, well, do you, the fight scenes, do you fight a lot? And I said, yeah, like in grade 4, I was in a fight and I lost. And that was the last fight that I can remember. I got beat up. And so I don't know much about fighting. I'll do a lot of research in that area kind of stuff. And other characters come in and out. Like there's a character, Phil, in Manistique, is totally based on a bar conversation I had in Manistique. Phil is a guy that I knew. But Luke has just sort of become his own kind of thing. He's sort of me, but he's not. And so the pop culture references are, if that makes sense, that they're moving away from me.
Okay, I'll come back to the questions that have come in the chat, but Lloyd has asked about asking a couple of questions, but would prefer to sort of ask, orally, I guess, or vocally or whatever. So Lloyd, go for it.
Go for it. Got to unmute. No, got to unmute.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Lloyd. Okay, well, maybe while we figure that out, I'll just type it into him. Okay. We can't, Lloyd, we can't, oh gosh, I'm a really bad
Quick, Cory, play something.
Okay, anyway, no, okay, so I got another question here for you. Mark Morton, who I also, he tried to message someone about them being in his class. I was also in one of Mark Morton's classes way back in the day in the 90s, or maybe early 2000s, I can't remember. Asks, would you ever want to combine your talents and write a graphic novel? That's a great question. I mean, there's some great sort of noirish type and really literary graphic novels out there, to the point where there's the university courses dedicated to them alone. So
yeah, there's a guy named Dean Cook who unfortunately died, who was doing some amazing Richard Stark graphic novels, which I read and just love. My answer to that, I've actually been asked that. I've been asked that by agents too. And I said, yes, I will do a graphic novel as long as I don't have to draw the pictures, because it's so much work. I've done some of them. I've done for Scholastic, I've done graphic novel type things like that. It's a bloody amount of work. So Mark, I learned how to write so I wouldn't have to draw anymore. That's what it was.
Yeah, good answer. Sorry, I realized I just sent that message about not being able to hear Lloyd only to Anita. So
Okay.
I'm doing very well. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're just gonna keep. Lloyd, do you want to try again? Can you hear me?
I cannot actually. He'll have to maybe type it in the chat.
Yeah, I think so. I think yeah, you're gonna have to do that because I can't figure out why we can't hear you. But okay, so here's another one from James Cron. What was the hardest part of the writing, or the sticking points, struggling points, if any, like that?
That's a super good question.
Mm-hmm.
That goes back to the why is Luke doing this? A shout out to my main reader is in Ontario. Her name is Teresa, and she is fabulous. And she was always asking me why. And so bugger when you can't remember your own characters' names, Leroy. When Leroy shows up, was a point in the novel where it's like, where is this going? What are you doing? Remember, I'm a pantser, and I know they're going to New Mexico, but I don't know what's going to happen in New Mexico. So the struggles are like the questions of like, why are you doing this? For what's the reason? And Luke asked that. So, but I would find things. Sometimes you just got to go on. And even if you write crap, you might write 2 chapters that you end up deleting, but you just got to keep pushing, you know? So there are struggling points. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that would be the case where maybe you get to the end of 2 chapters and you're like, why did I get here? How did I get here? None of it was really worth anything, but I wrote through it, and you know, it was, I tried, you know, and maybe there's a sentence or something you can pull out of that, and that will set off something in a totally different direction.
Music, just to say that music is so important. Like when I'm stuck, sometimes I will throw on music, and I know like the current novel, I'm listening to a lot of Beck. And I just drive the Beck, and you just kind of weirdly write along with it, you know. Or I was writing a novel about Japanese samurai, and I was listening to a lot of traditional Japanese music, and it's just sort of, you just go with the music. It's a way out of writer's block.
That's fascinating. Okay, here's a question from Paul Little. What effect did getting into writing fringe plays with Reba have on your fiction writing process? That is a great question.
You know, I thankfully grateful for people who say I'm good at dialogue. I really take that compliment because I love dialogue. I love writing dialogue. Fringe plays happen to be all dialogue. I had never had the experience, both in writing and co-writing with Reba, to have actors speak your lines out loud. And I think actually it made my cadences get tighter, because you can hear bad dialogue. It's just, I'm sorry, I go to some place sometimes with bad dialogue and I just cringe. I go, that just doesn't work, you know? So I think it actually tightened stuff up.
Yeah, I imagine, you know, being able to not have to, you know, act out all of the voices yourself would also sort of allow you to step back and be like, okay, this is not going to work like this.
To hear it through other people's lens. I mean, that's the thing. You know, I love hearing people kind of go, oh, I never would have thought of reading it that way.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Trying to think, like, well, I would like to get that question or two from Lloyd in. Oh, wait. Here it is. Okay, here we go. Perfect timing. Okay, so Lloyd's questions are, A character with my first name was in your first Luke novel. Why am I not in this novel? And B, some of us know you have another major interest, which is theology. Did you consider including a fundamentalist Christian in your novels? I have not yet read this book. and someone else earlier did mention, you know, doing no spoilers or whatever. So I've been trying to sort of like talk around major plot and stuff like that. Still talking.
I can answer these ones pretty good. Names sneak in in really funny ways. All of a sudden, if you look at my books, every one of my books has a Larry or a Lawrence. First by accident and now on purpose. Lloyd is another name that does slip in. We came close this time, Lloyd, with a Floyd. So it's sort of like, you know, but names just come and go, that fits. Like seriously, there's a character named Ethan Joseph, EJ, which I never made the connection to my son, Elias Jacob.
Oh, that's your son. I didn't know that. That's amazing. Yeah.
And it's just, you know, and so names are kind of funny. That names are really important to me. And actually to say that Eli did name Luke Fischer. And he told me later it was based on Luke was a guy who just, I forget whether he had a funny story as to where those came from, because I had what he considered really bad names for the character. And he said, why don't you call him Luke Fischer? And I went,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's good. It's really good. It's a really solid name. I feel like we're having some breakthroughs here, maybe some like therapy type things happening here.
It's very cathartic, very cathartic.
Yeah, there you go. For me as well.
Now, theology, you got to talk about young adult first.
Oh, yes, right, yes.
Okay, so Fallen One Day is not a young adult book, but it got pitched as a young adult book, and it was at its own peril, because it would get reviewed and people would say, this isn't a young adult book, but it has a young adult in it. So I always said, if I put a young adult in another book, they'd be dead by chapter 2. So to make sure that there's no young adults in the book, right? And I'm wondering about the fundamentalist Christian. I don't think they'd last very long in the storyline, probably. Theology does sneak into my books, but it's more if you know me kind of thing. Definitely stuff like Fallen One Day is full of it. In a weird, obtuse way, tied into the knight errant and why we do things, and even tied into the idea of death. There's some theology that's, I haven't figured it out. It's going to take me a few more books to figure it out, but I think it's in there somewhere.
Well, it's good that we have a few more of your books to watch you try and figure it out. Okay, quick question from James Cornelson. People put themselves into their plots and characters. What about your community? Do you write for your community, or is it an expansive audience? Ooh, that's
increasingly it's expansive. That's a great question, because I don't really write for my community. For one reason, crime fiction I have found in Canada is not as popular as in other places. I actually have a really growing readership in the UK, which I love. And I've been interviewed in the UK and stuff because crime fiction is so big there, and also in the States as well, where the imprints in Canada are scarce. People like crime fiction, but there's not as much places to publish it. So it's expansive that way. And I don't really think too much about my community when I'm writing, maybe by osmosis or something, but in the same way, I don't put characters in novels really about people that are around me. Like there's no one ever in my novels that is like my wife, you know, she's my hugest, biggest supporter kind of stuff, but there's no one you could say, oh, that's probably Carrie.
Good that you got that in before the end of the launch, I think. Yeah.
Sneak that in because Luke's having sex with somebody. I don't know.
Oh, well, on that note, okay. Well, I've got some quick rapid fire questions for you then, because there's a few that I actually do want answers to. Okay, rapid fire questions. Then maybe we do the draw and say the thank yous and wrap it up. Okay, you walk into a diner for breakfast at Sig's, and at the and Sig's at the counter and Floyd's in front of the grill. What do you order?
I think I got to order the steak.
Yeah.
Like something he doesn't burn. It's actually a good steak with a whole load of onions.
Okay.
Not much vegetables on it. Yep.
Favorite food in Mexico? Oh, wow. Rapid fire. Come on.
Okay. This is fresh fish tacos, not from a restaurant, but on the street.
Okay.
The street that the locals go to, fresh fish tacos.
Have you ever fired a gun?
Yes, lots.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, there's a rapid fire though. Oh, no pun intended, I guess. But okay, which writer, living or dead, do you wish would write a thriller crime novel sort of that hasn't?
Who would write one who hasn't?
Yeah.
Oh. Did you say dead? Could be dead?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish Mordecai Richler would have written a crime novel. I think he's one of the Canada's best storytellers ever. And he should have some crime.
Good answer. I'm afraid he's dead though, so he's not going to be able to do that. Okay. Who would you like? Okay. Other than, I'll preface this by other than Cory, who could you see playing Luke Fischer in a movie?
Oh man, that answer is secret.
Oh yeah. Okay. That's fair.
I do have a person, a physicality in mind, and I even have tried to figure out a way to send one of the books to him or his agent.
Okay.
But I'm not going to say his name out loud.
Yeah, that's fair, because then it'll for all of us, it'll just like, then suddenly every time I read about Luke Fischer, it's going to be, whoever, Andy Griffith or something like that. Maybe not Andy Griffith. Okay. Well, who would direct the movie if in an ideal world?
Coen Brothers.
Nice. Very good. Very good. Okay, sorry. Favorite beer that isn't Pacifico?
You should be rapid fire, right?
Sure.
Boy, that's so hard. Okay. I really like Grolsch a lot.
I love girls. Yeah, I love a good. Yeah, that's great. Not that it matters what I think. Last concert you attended. I'm guessing. Their name is in the book.
You were there too. By accident. I swear by accident. Well, that one maybe not by accident. The last concert, like a day before everything shut down, was Concert Hall Wilco. And I was third row or whatever.
I was second row.
I know we were right there. I wanted Jeff to kind of call me up on the stage because I know all the songs.
Me too.
You know, but no, yeah, Wilco.
Yeah. And it was so funny when I got closer to the end of the book, and this is not a spoiler by any stretch, but yeah, and there's a character whose name has Wilco in it, and I was like, come on, Craig. But you didn't even realize it. Okay, and I don't know,
True.
Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Say what?
Pineapple on pizza?
Not really. Because the grandkids like it, yes.
Oh, okay, that's fair. That's a good, very diplomatic answer to a very polarizing question. So okay, well, those are all my rapid fire Q&A questions for you. So did you want to like do the draw and stuff and wrap things up, do some thank yous and stuff like that? Yeah, I would like to thank Anita for sort of quarterbacking the technical stuff. I mean, you know, today's been a bit of just an amazing, like at 4:45 I sent a message to Craig and I was like, my power's out. My power just went out. Like the power was out like in my whole neighborhood. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. If I need to, I'll run to work and like do it from there, but it'll be a drag. Like it won't be a drag for everyone else, but it'll be a drag for me because I won't be able to drink Pacifico. That's right. Ask for it by name, Pacifico.
Ask for it by name. Where good beer is sold.
That's right. But anyway, so that didn't end up that rectified itself in short order. And then, you know, the sound stuff or whatever, but it all came through without a hitch. Lovely. Great job, Anita.
Thank you. So yeah,
that's my thank you. And thank you for asking me to do this, Craig. And
I'm just so thankful to you and to Cory. Thank you for agreeing to play. It's just so awesome. Like, I mean, just it's kind of blowing my mind the gratitude that I have for people. Like Anita stepped in and she did so much to help this launch happen, and for Ben as well. And so those are my big thank yous. Also, I'll go through the thank yous now because I started, and then we'll go into the prizes. Linda at Quantum Printing, she donated all the printing for the posters. They're a limited edition Manistique poster, and I'm going to be giving away a couple of them. They're on a really nice, like heavy stock, you know, and she donated them, which I thought was fantastic. McNally Robinson, where you can buy my books, for their ongoing support of Manitoba writers. I'm just constantly floored by how much they support Manitoba writers. For the Writers Union of Canada, which Anita knows all about, kind of thing, because they are so cool. And the Writers Union of Canada make me actually feel like a writer. So the novel was dedicated to my reader in Ontario, Teresa, and my editor, Alistair, of course. The cover that everyone loves to talk about. Everyone loves to talk about the cover, from my very good friend, Phil, who is a couple squares below me. He's getting pointed at right now. Phil and I went to art school together. Also, he's in Ontario, but by way of Moose Jaw. That's the Moose Jaw thing. I always wanted him to paint this cover, even when the book wasn't finished. And when he said yes, I was just over the moon because it's a killer cover. I just love it so much. So that was Phil. My family, of course, the lovely for all her support. Eli did name the guy, so I got to, you know, this is going to be recorded. Eli will watch it later, so I got to thank Eli. A lot of crime writers, and I'll only mention one, Ed Church from the UK. Ed Church has been a huge influence and encourager for me, and writes really good police procedural novels. He's in one of those London, Bristol places kind of thing. But anyways, great crime guy. And of course, all of you. Manistique has really got a lot more attention than any of my other books. And it's because of all these people in these squares, readers, friends, both here and online. As you know, I spend a little time on Twitter, and I have a really cool little cool community of people who really encourage me to do this thing. And I write, I've said before, I write because it feeds my soul. It really does feed my soul, but I also write to be read. I can't just leave these things on my computer. And so when one of my favorite things to do is talk to people about characters that I've created. You know, talk to me about Luke, talk to me about Sam. I love that. And we just chat about books in general because I'm a big reader. So thanks to everyone. I always say the next Pacific goes on me. And it is. If I see you in person, I will buy you a beer. So I have a few draws. And we'll do them quickly. There's five draws, and they're each kind of like a little prize package. So the first draw, oh yeah, people know I wear a lot of hats. It's a hat. So everyone who ordered a book from me in local in Winnipeg is in here, and the first one I draw will win a poster. So that's the first one. And Bill, I never know how to say Bill's last name, Fugler, who ran the neighborhood. Bill gets a Manistique poster. Okay. Next one is you get a poster. Just clap, clap, clap. Next one is you get a poster and a free album download for the Good Show new album called Graysville. I will send you the link to download that album, kind of thing. So that's prize number 2. Okay. I'm not supposed to look. I'm not going to look. Pull it out. Oh, there you go. I'm not sure if they're here tonight, but Jason and Melanie, who are in the community here, they will be getting the poster and the free album download. Now, the next one, it's getting juicy. Prize 3 is a limited edition poster and a beer. Why not? Get a poster and a beer. Vic Pankratz. Poster, beer. This went to the right person. This is good. Okay, prize 4 is a poster and a book of your choice. Okay, so I've got paperbacks of Surf City, Follow One Day, and Manistique. And if you read all those, I can send you a direct download for Correction Line or one of the other ones. So this is a poster and a book of your choice. Okay. Owen Bradshaw. Might not be here, but Owen's actually in the neighborhood too here. This is great because I know he owns 2 books. So he gets a poster and a book of his choice. Now, the last one is the big prize. It's a prize package. It's a poster, the book of your choice, a beer, and in Luke 3, your name will be mentioned in that novel. In the published novel, whoever I hope I get a good name. Your name will be, Lloyd, this could be your chance. Okay, I'm gonna find out here. Pull this one out. Evan Coos. Where's Evan? Somewhere. So Evan Coos, look for your name in Luke 3, real name. And also, I will get all these prizes out to you, deliver. Thank you for sticking around. Thanks so much for all of this. I really appreciate all of you. That's it.
That's great. Thanks so much, Craig. Yeah, so I've got I'm unmuted and I'm going to clap audibly. So yeah, that was a lot of fun and it was great. And yeah, congratulations again on the book. It was just fantastic. So I hope everyone had a good time and has enjoyed the book or is enjoying the book. And yeah, I've got not much else to say other than that.
Go drink some beer.
Roger that.
Beverage of your choice.
Roger Wilco, as they say.
Roger Wilco. Spoiler. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.